I can't believe it's Christmas right around the corner. Today is actually the first Sunday of Advent. Advent is the season that we prepare for the coming of Jesus. And so there's only, if you think about it, there's only 4 weeks left until Christmas. And so now when you turn on the radio, all you're going to hear is Christmas carols until it starts coming out of your ears. And yesterday our family actually put up our Christmas tree. We already put it up because we wanted to take Christmas pictures so that our Christmas cards would be ready before Christmas so that we can send out our Christmas things, and we put out our Christmas lights and all these kinds of things, and it's crazy. It just feels like last month was January, and then now it's going to be December or January of 2012, believe it or not. So the first Sunday of Advent, last week was Thanksgiving. We talked about giving thanks to whom and not necessarily to what. And we're returning back into our study of Mark, okay? And hopefully by the end of December, we're going to be done with Mark. That's my goal for this year. We started Mark in January, so it's taken us almost an entire year to go through Mark, and we're here at Mark 14, and hopefully we'll be able to finish Mark by the end of the year. The story that we have this morning, the first Sunday of Advent, is actually one of my favorite stories because it's a very unique story in that the way that Jesus describes the act in which the woman does when Jesus enters the home. Okay, so it's the first time and probably the only place in the entire Bible where actually Jesus calls an act towards Christ, so something that somebody does to Jesus, as something that is beautiful. Okay? Throughout the Gospels, whether in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and in different places, Jesus, when he sees great faith or great acts of service or different things, he says, the things that you have done is good, or the things that you've done is great. But this passage in Mark 14 is the only place in the entire New Testament and in the Gospels when Jesus sees an act that is done to him, and he says, she has done something that is beautiful to me. The gift and the act that this woman does on behalf of Christ is something that causes Jesus to say, this is not just a good thing, this is not just a great thing, but this is actually something that is beautiful. And so our first Sunday of Advent, as we prepare the coming of Christ, as we wait for Jesus to enter into our world, to signify the coming of Jesus, we want to talk about how do we give our gifts in a way so that it is beautiful to Christ, and not just in a way that it is good or great. So what do we do? What makes our gifts beautiful to Jesus versus something that's simply good versus great? Right? So we want to see from this story what made the woman's gift to Christ such a beautiful thing that stood out for all the different things that Jesus encountered throughout his life and his ministry. So we're going to look at 3 things. What makes a gift beautiful? And the first thing that we want to talk, and the first thing that we see in our story this morning, is that a beautiful gift, okay, now hear me carefully, these are aspects, okay, not in that each part stands alone on its own, that they are all connected, okay, but the first characteristic of a gift that causes Jesus to call it beautiful, as we see in the story, is that it was costly. Okay, now hear me carefully, that it's not that the amount of the gift in itself is what causes Jesus to say, but it is one aspect of which, okay, that we see in the story. That the gift that the woman gave to Christ was, in fact, extremely costly. Okay, let's take a look at this. In verse 3 in Mark 14 it says, Jesus was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, and when a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. Okay, what makes this perfume so expensive? And we'll try to explain that. Nard, or otherwise known as spikenard, is actually a flower, okay? And it's not just any flower that you can find in the backyard, or a flower that somebody would have been able to find in Israel or in Egypt during the time of Jesus. It's a flower that only grows in the Himalayas of China and Nepal. Okay, you can actually find it on the border of northern India as well. I've actually personally seen this flower. It's a very aromatic flower, and it only grows in very high altitudes. Again, so it's in the Himalayan mountains of China, Nepal, and India. Okay, so think about it this way. Even today, when something comes from far away, it's the value of that object increases. Why? Not just because it's precious, but also because of the cost it takes to transport such items. The thing that made this perfume so expensive was that this flower was not readily available in India or in Israel. It had to be shipped and transported from China, Nepal, or India. And Mark makes it a point to say it wasn't just some mixture of nard and other things to make this perfume. Mark makes it a point to say it was pure nard, meaning that there was no substitute to this stuff. It was just absolutely pure form of this flower that came all the way from the Himalayas, from China, from Nepal, and from India. He makes a point that it is an extremely rare flower that this woman had made into a perfume. Okay? Now here's something that we need to understand though, right? How expensive? How expensive? Very expensive, but how expensive? And in verse 5 it says, the people that are watching all of this, they make this claim, right? Because this woman comes with this really expensive, it's pure nard, it's not the fake stuff, it's not, the fake Coach or the fake Gucci or whatever it is, it's actually the actual thing, right? It's not the fake stuff, it's the real thing, and she comes and she breaks the jar and pours all the perfume on Jesus' foot, and there's people who are watching and they're like, man, why this waste? You could have sold this perfume for a year's wages. A year's wages during the time of Jesus was 300 denarii, which means that translated today, taking inflation and all those different things, people estimate that 300 denarii in Jesus' time today would be worth about $25,000 to $30,000. This bottle of perfume was worth $25,000 to $30,000. Now ask yourself, what kind of woman buys perfume that costs $25,000 to $30,000? Now I ask this question today very often, not with perfume, but with purses and with shoes. When I married my wife is extremely not materialistic, meaning that she really doesn't care. If you look at her wardrobe, it looks like she might have actually come from an Amish society, okay? Because every time we go shopping, only colors that she likes, she picks out black or gray. And she'll pick out a black dress and she says, don't you really like this dress? And I'm like, don't you have 10 of those same black dresses? If you want to know that I'm not making this up, you can see what she's wearing today. She's actually wearing black. You'll see her during the fellowship time. But she has, when you look at her closet, it's all black. It's very simple, very plain. And so I didn't realize this until my sister came around, because my sister is very opposite from my wife. She likes the lavish things. She likes the nice, expensive things. She likes the name brand. And she was telling me one day that she got a great deal on a purse. And I said, let me see the purse. And it's not even really a big purse. It's one of those little side clutch things that you can maybe fit your small Bible and maybe a cell phone in. It's not even big enough where you can put your entire wallet in, okay? It's like a small thing, and it's from Louis Vuitton. She's a college student, by the way. She's like, I got an amazing deal on this thing. And I'm like, okay, what? I know these things are expensive, so I'm like, what's an amazing deal? Maybe $100, $200. She said, Dave, I got it for her, right? And it's like in the thousands. It's like $1,000 something that she paid for this bag. I'm sitting there looking at her, I'm like, are you kidding me? And I picked it up and I started smelling it. I'm like, is this made of gold? Every time you open it, there's a steak coming out of it. I mean, like, what is the point of this thing being so... And then she says, hey, look, not only that, I got a really nice pair of shoes. Okay, did you know that women's shoes, you can tell if they're really expensive if on the bottom they have the red thing? You guys ever seen that? I didn't realize that until they said the really expensive ones, they have the little red bottom things, and it costs like thousands of dollars for those shoes. When I read the story, I'm asking the same question. What kind of a woman spends $25,000 to $30,000 on a bottle of perfume? Because the same question that I asked my sister is, really, does that $1,000 purse make any difference between the $10 fake purse that you have, that you carry on every day? She says, yes, it does. It really does make a difference. $25,000. What is this woman thinking? Why is she buying such a lavish perfume? What we need to understand, though, is that this woman is not just buying something that she just went out to splurge on, okay? It wasn't like a Black Friday splurge. It wasn't just something like where she's like, oh my, this is like the Louis Vuitton, this is like the Gucci, this is like, I don't know what the highest brand name during Jesus' time was, but this is the thing. It's the pure nard. It is when people see me wearing this, it's like they're gonna notice from like a mile away. They're like, yeah, that woman got something. It's not something like that necessarily, but rather the thing that this woman had purchased, this jar of perfume, wasn't necessarily meant for use. It was actually an investment. It was an investment as if people would invest in gold, in stocks, in bonds, in our day. It was an investment. Because see, look at this. It makes it very clear to us that this woman who had this perfume of pure nard came in with an alabaster jar. That this perfume was not in a dispenser, it wasn't in any other kind of glass, it wasn't in porcelain, but it was in alabaster. Alabaster, there was two types of alabaster. There's a type that is soft, okay? There's a type of alabaster that's really soft, that scratches easily and breaks easily. The most common type of alabaster jar that was used during Jesus' time is called calcite alabaster, and it's hard and it's thick. The only way that you can open an alabaster jar is if you break it. Okay? And so when this woman comes in and this person says, why this waste? It's $25,000 to $30,000. It wasn't just a splurge for this woman. It was an investment. It was a long-term life investment. Because why? This jar, it wasn't like she could pour some of it and then save the rest of it. If you were going to use it, you had to crack open the jar and use all of the contents that were inside. For the woman that was giving this gift to Jesus, it wasn't just, hey, here, let me give you a part of something that I've really spent a lot of money on and I feel a little bit guilty about. It was actually, in fact, for her, this jar of perfume was a long-term investment. It was a $30,000 investment that she had made in her well-being, of her family, of her life, of her children, that she brings to Christ. It wasn't a gift where, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, right? It's happened to me on numerous occasions, because in our family, like I told you, my wife is the conservative one, right? She conserves, and I'm the more spendy person, okay? My mom makes fun of me all the time because I spend more time shopping and buying things than my wife does, okay? So this happens to me quite often when I buy something that I know I feel a bit guilty about, okay? I spend a lot of money and I feel a little bit guilty about it, and so that Sunday I'll give a little extra offering. Okay? It isn't that kind of thing. For this woman, this alabaster jar wasn't just a splurge. It was her well-being. It was her retirement. It was her future. It was her livelihood. It was an investment that she makes. And so when she makes this costly gift to Christ, Jesus says it is a beautiful thing. Because why? It's not something that she was able to afford. It was everything. It was an investment that she had made for her entire life. That she comes and she breaks the jar on the foot of Jesus. But remember what I told you in the beginning, it's very important for us to understand it is not necessarily the price with which the woman gives that makes this gift beautiful. Okay? If we were to use that argument, we can say, well, the rich people, then they will give gifts all the time of $1 million, of billions of dollars, or trillions of dollars, or whatever it is, and Jesus will count their gift to be more beautiful than other people. But it is not the amount or the cost of the gift that makes it beautiful. What it is actually is that the next quality of this gift that makes it beautiful is that it is uncalculated gift. It was the fact that it was uncalculated for the woman that made this costly gift a category of one that is beautiful and not merely good or great. Why was this gift so uncalculated? Why was she able to give this $20,000 to $30,000 gift without even blinking an eye, this investment? How was she able to do this? Because compared to who Christ was, compared to the majesty and the person of who Jesus was, nothing came close. And she was able to give without calculating. She was able to give without measuring. She was able to give without thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to hurt me if I give it to it. Because why? When she saw Jesus, nothing came close. When was the last time you and I gave a gift like that, brothers and sisters, when we're not calculating the cost of our gifts? More than I like to admit, it happens to me often again. Because I'll watch something, or I hear something, I'll attend a service, or I'll be in my prayers or doing something, and I feel God saying, look, I want you to give this offering or this gift where I feel like this is an expression of your gratitude to me, okay? I'll give you a specific example. We were at a concert last year called Inspire. And at this concert, this event called Inspire, there were all these Christian artists that came together, and they were raising awareness about this project, okay, about children. Remind me of the name. Here? Mahal, yes, Mahal Foundation, okay? It was about the children in orphanages and things like that, and they were raising money, okay? And the speaker, he came up and he started saying this. He said, I want you to give tonight. And I want you to not just give, but I want you to give till it hurts. I want you to give like you've never given before. I want you to think of a number that you would just think of a number that God pops into your mind right now, and whatever that number is, stop calculating and give it to God. And so I said, okay, I was really moved, I was really inspired by the story, I was really challenged. I was sitting there, I'm like, as soon as he said, give like you've never given before, think of a number popped into my head. Number popped into my head. And as soon as that number popped into my head, I turned to Hannah, who was sitting next to me, and I said, Hannah, this is the number that came into my head. I think we should give this. Hannah said, great. Because my wife, she really gives generously all the time. Okay, so she's like, yeah, give. Here's the problem. The challenge and the call that he gave was in the first half an hour of his message. There was another hour and a half or so left in the concert. And so for the next hour and a half, I'm sitting there with this number in my hand, and I'm thinking, God, that's a lot. And so for the next hour and a half, I'm thinking, God, if I give this, that means for this month, we're going to be short on here, we're going to be short on here, we're going to be short here. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And so God's really good, right? What does God do? He says, fine, I'll give you a discount. And so the number drops by like $100. I'm like, oh, okay, good. Thank you, God. You're the best. And then the next hour or 45 minutes goes by, and then what? God is so good. He gives me more discounts. And he's like, yes, you know what? Don't worry about it. Here, I'll give you another 10% discount. Oh, here, I'll give you another 50% discount. Oh, yeah, whatever. Just take off 85% of what you were thinking. And eventually it became to a fraction of what it was that I initially wanted to give. And as difficult and as shameful as this is, I gave that discounted number than the actual number that first popped into my head. And it's not because I didn't care for the children. It's not because I didn't want to give. It was because I was sitting there and I was calculating it. Because why? From what I saw and what I had, it didn't really compare. What makes this gift so beautiful to Christ is that when this woman saw Jesus entering into the house, when she entered into the house and she saw Jesus, who Jesus was, what Jesus was, the thing that Jesus had done for her and for us was no comparisons to anything in this world. And it's like Paul says in this scripture passage in Philippians, he says, what is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ. I consider them rubbish, trash, worthless, that I may gain Christ. To her, it wasn't calculated because it was worth who Christ was. There have been times when I have been able to give like that. When I've been so overwhelmed by who Jesus is, the goodness, the grace of God, and I've been able to give like that. And you know what? When other people may look at me and they say, what are you doing? My answer is, it means nothing compared to who Jesus is. You see, when the people around this woman started saying to her, why this waste? What are you doing? That's $30,000 worth of stuff you just broke and poured on his feet. That's your life savings. That's your investment. What are you thinking about? This woman must have looked back at them and said, what cost? What are you talking about? What good is this money compared to who Christ is? What good is it compared to who Jesus is? And you see, this gift that this woman gives, it's not the cost. Yes, is it costly, the gifts that we give? Absolutely. Even in the small gift, I know that they're costly. But it's not necessarily the amount that Jesus considers. It is the uncalculated nature and the heart that which this woman gives that Jesus looks and says, this gift is beautiful. Why was this woman able to give? Why was it that she was able to look at Jesus and say, compared to you, nothing else matters. Compared to you, everything is rubbish. Let me do a little bit of a history lesson. Why was this woman able to do that? Who was this woman? Okay? who is this woman? In verse 3, in this story, it says this woman, Jesus was reclining, okay, meaning that he was sitting and resting at this house. This house belonged to Simon the leper. Okay? We don't know too much about this Simon. All we know that he used to be a leper, and obviously he is not a leper anymore, because if he was still a leper, then he wouldn't be able to own a home or be even in public space. So he is Simon the leper, meaning that he used to be a leper, but he is no longer. So Jesus is at this guy's house. He used to be a leper. Remember what I told you about leprosy? He used to be a reject, but he no longer is. He's cured. And there is Jesus. And here comes a woman right after that. You see that he's at the house of this leper, and a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume. Who is this woman? Right? Who is this woman? John tells us in his account. John 12. Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom he had raised from the dead. Here dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard and poured it on Jesus' foot. John tells us who this woman is in the story in Mark. It was Mary. And who was Mary? Mary is the sister of Martha and the brother to Lazarus. Who is Lazarus? Lazarus is the man that Jesus raises from the dead. Remember that story? That Mary and Martha come to Jesus and they say, Jesus, our brother is dying, he's sick. Please come and heal him. Jesus purposely waits 3 days. And by the time that Jesus gets to that town, what happens? Mary and Martha said to Jesus, Jesus, don't worry about it, because our brother Lazarus is already dead. He's in the ground already. If only he had come a little bit earlier, we would have been able to save him. And Jesus says, don't worry about it. And he opens the tomb and he says, Lazarus, come out. This is the brother of Lazarus. And when we look at the story, a lot of people don't, like I said, we don't really know who Simon the leper is, but they say maybe the reason why they're all there, right? It says where Lazarus lived, and Lazarus is brother to Mary and Martha. They think that Simon the leper is actually the father of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Maybe. Okay, they're trying to connect the dots of why they're all there. And they say that perhaps Simon the leper is their father. Now think about this. If you were in her shoes, you just came home, and here in your house is your father who used to be a leper, outcasted by society, living to just rot and die out the rest of your life, whom Jesus has healed, and there he is sitting at your house. And then on the other side, you see Lazarus, your brother who was dead, that Jesus resurrected from the dead. And so here's your father, or a man, even if it's not her father, is a close acquaintance, close enough where she can come in and out of her house. Here's a man who used to have leprosy that is healed by Christ. On the other side, here is her own very brother that was dead and Jesus rose again. And here is Jesus sitting in the middle. Mary walks in, and what has she done? What happens? She is overwhelmed by God's goodness. She sees the healing of her father or of her close friend. She sees the raising of the dead of her brother, and she sees the person responsible for it right in the middle. And she walks in and she is absolutely overwhelmed by it. And she said, oh my goodness. The goodness of Christ, the grace and the love of God is so apparent in this room. And so when she gives her gift of $20,000 to $30,000, when she breaks it without calculating, she does so because she sees the goodness and the love and the grace of Christ. She does, because she's overwhelmed by God's goodness. You know, Thanksgiving, like I said, is a great time to look back and to be thankful for not only what we have, but to whom we have all things. Each and every single day, brothers and sisters, we should be overwhelmed by God's goodness. When I think about my children, okay, we were taking Christmas pictures and it's amazing. I can't believe we have 4 people in our family. right? You should have seen the kind of ridiculous things that we were doing trying to get them to look at the camera and smile, okay? Only parents will understand what that feels like, right? I took, in a span of 10 minutes, over 150 pictures. In a span of 10 minutes, over 150 pictures, just going like this, because hopefully, while I'm taking the picture and my wife is in the background making monkey sounds and fart noises, that maybe we'll get one picture that we can use for our children. When I look at our children, when I look at our family, when I look at my health, when we look at what's going on, when we look at all the different circumstances lead up to this point, it's overwhelming to see God's goodness in my life. And when God's goodness becomes real and present and becomes the foundation of everything that we do, then the gifts start becoming uncalculated. Because why? Everything is worthless compared to who Christ is. And for this woman, and what Jesus calls to be beautiful is that. It's not necessarily the cost, it's not necessarily the amount, it's not necessarily how much, but it is how and why she gives. She gives because she is overwhelmed, that she sees who Jesus is and says nothing else compares to it. Everything in this world, you can give me anything you want. It's worthless compared to who Jesus is, because who Jesus is amazing. And when we give like that, Christ looks and he says, that is a beautiful gift. First week of Advent. We have 4 more weeks, right, leading up to Christmas. And it's kind of cool this year because Christmas falls on Sunday and New Year's falls on Sunday. Right? So it's kind of cool that, I don't know when the last time this happened, right? But it's cool that it works out this way. But I pray that as we begin our season of Advent, okay, that as we think about buying gifts, right, we're already making Christmas lists and buying gifts to one another. As we think about gifts to one another, as we think about giving our gifts to God, I pray that in the back of our minds that we are saying, Lord, may it be your goodness, your grace, and your love, the foundation of why we give. That as we give gifts to you, to all your things that you've done for us, that it is uncalculated, motivated not by how much we give, but rather who you are in our lives. Let's pray.